Welcome, guys, to week 3 of relationship goals. And today we're going to be following up on what we talked about last week. We talked about the safe and the unsafe people. And one of the things that we talked about in the safe or unsafe is the idea of ghosting or light switching not being safe. Now, how many of you guys have been ghosted or light switched? Okay, how many of you guys have done it to somebody else? Okay. So this is kind of a big deal, and it's understandable. People oftentimes step away from relationships because they're afraid, they don't know what to do or how to deal with it. So I'm calling this, it's not you, it's me, because that's also what some people do, right? That's like the alternative that seems a little nicer than the ghosting or light switching by saying, oh, you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, even though you might be thinking, I'm kind of not interested and I don't know how to say this. It's not you, it's me. I always get that confused and want to say it the other way. But we're going to be looking at another aspect of this about how to not ghost or light switch. What can you do? What are the things you can do to make a relationship better, to at least give it a shot? I think a lot of you guys that are here might be in relationships, whether it's friendships, work, romantic, or what have you, that you're sitting there going, is there anything I can do to make this better? Here's what most people do, though, and I think we've all done this too, but most people, when they're having struggles in relationships, the conversation is more about what's wrong with the other person, right? You go to your friends and go, they do this and they do that, blah, 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 and then you're waiting for the other person to change. Well, that's very disempowering. In fact, it keeps you really stuck if all you're sitting there focusing, oh, that person would be perfect if, and then there's a whole bunch of things after that, and somehow you've got this false hope, which is not that helpful, that somebody else is going to change, and there's no basis for it. But we're going to look at 10 things today that we can do to be safe people, to not ghost or light switch, but to at least give a shot at having a good relationship. Now, people have free will, so it certainly doesn't work 100% of the time. But if there are relationships, and we'll also just talk about how this affects the different categories of relationships. But we're going to talk about what can you do, because believe it or not, there's a lot that you can do if you're looking at that part that can make a big difference. So that's exciting, right? You want to hear about that? Yes? Okay. All right. So let's go to Romans 12. And it's like in the last third of the Bible, like Acts. I was right there right away. Just lucky me. If you're in the Gospels, it's Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Romans 12, and in verse 18. Now this is so good. It says, if it is possible, as much as depends on you, live peaceably with all men. And again, for the most part, whenever you see the word man, it means people. It's the Greek word anthropos, which is man and women combined. It's mankind. So as much as is possible that we are to live peaceably with everybody. So we're not supposed to be just giving up on relationships and bouncing right away. If we want to be really safe people, we'll do the part that we can do, not their part, but we'll do the part that we are able to do to live peaceably. And that affects all things, not just romantic, but friendships, family, work, all of those kind of relationships and kind of thing. But again, like I just said, it's not going to work with everybody, but, and then it says in verse 20, therefore, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him a drink. For in so doing, you will heap coals of fire on his head, which I'll come back to. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Okay, so there's a bunch of things where it says, we're going to read this one too, but to love your enemies. It says, if your enemy is hungry, to feed them. If they're thirsty, give them a drink. Sometimes when people think the safe and unsafe people, they think, oh, you're unsafe. I'm just going to cut you off and have nothing to do with you. Quite frankly, did you read the safe and unsafe list yesterday or last week? Everybody's got some of it, right? It's a continuum. It's not like, oh, like I do all of these things perfectly. I'm always forgiving. I'm never bitter. No, so we are going to be in a world where many, many, many people, and if people haven't really worked on their healing or growth kind of a thing, like usually most workplaces aren't the healthiest. Like, how are people sometimes think that it's that, oh, I'm going to go to work and I'm going to have all these great people. I don't know. I don't see that very often. That's just like, it's not really realistic. So it's, what can we do? We can still be kind and give to people, even if they are unsafe people. We'll talk about some of the limits and boundaries things as well. But then it says, if you do it, you will heap coals of fire on your head. I just want to tell you, this is an Eastern custom. Nobody knows exactly what it means. There's like debate. There's some camps kind of say, oh, it's something to warm them and to make them feel good. And other camps are like, well, if you're kind to somebody that's an enemy of yours, it kind of pierces them. They're like, oh, like a little bit. So I'm not sure which one. I've definitely seen it kind of go both ways. Sometimes people get, upset that they can't rattle your cage. But sometimes, honestly, it just tears down walls on people. So I love this, though. It says, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. It is possible what we can do can affect others. Our behavior and how we conduct ourselves can, not all the time, but at least you've got a chance of moving the people you're in relationship with. Okay? Let's look at another one. We're going to actually go through this list of 10 things. Okay? One of them is in Matthew 7. This might be one of my favorite, and I forgot to get a little demonstration thing. It would have been funny, but I forgot it. Anyway, I'll tell you later. Matthew 7, and in verse 3, this is Jesus speaking, and he is being funny. Jesus was funny, and so he's speaking to people. And it says, he's saying, and why, in verse 3, why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye, but do not consider the plank in your own eye? So he's talking about this, like, see, I meant to bring a plank. That would have been really funny, right? So you get a plank. I'll just use the Bible. No, the Bible, that would be good to have anyway. Something, the book or something. I got something in my eye, right? But I'm going to Eduardo going, oh, look at you, let me fix you. I'll take this out of your eye. And you're forgetting you got this big, giant telephone pole coming out of your own eye. But this is how people normally relate to relationships, right? They get consumed with, let me point out the little thing. And oftentimes, like the plank and the speck are the same material, not all the time. But so Christ is saying, why do you do that? Why do you do that? It says, or in verse 4, or how can you say to your brother, let me remove the speck from your eye, and look, there is a plank in your own eye. Hypocrite, first remove the plank from your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Wow, there's so many great things in this section, right? First, it's one of the best things that you can do is in a relationship, look at the places that you have to shift instead of finger pointing, because it won't change it. It will keep you stuck if your focus is on, and a lot of times you even see people going, I'll change if they change. Mm-hmm. That's a losing battle. It's like, it's not going to happen. But it's also when you do work on really shifting some of the things in your life, whatever they may be, right? Maybe it is forgiving. Maybe it's being less critical. Maybe it is working harder or not, whatever in the relationship when you're working on things. Maybe it's like, maybe you made big changes, like like overcoming addiction things or that kind of thing. For me, I was like extremely out of control in the area of relationships as far as being promiscuous. I had had sex with a couple hundred people by my teens. I had been abused sexually as a kid. And so, of course, like that showed up. I didn't realize this. I had no idea that I was being influenced by those things. But me like looking for, and here's the craziness. I'm doing this kind of behavior and expecting a great relationship to come along, right? So often people are stuck in some really big, dark things and not looking at that, but expecting a relationship to come along and save you, which is where I was. And so it was kind of nutsy that I had any expectation of finding somebody great when this is how I was behaving. But when I started looking at not thinking, oh, my problem is I just can't find the right guy. That wasn't my problem, right? My problem was all of these things where I was cheating on people. I was out of control in terms of acting out as far as sex goes because I was sexually abused. So that was all kind of broken in my head. So, but when I went and got healing on this, then it was something that even when I meet other people or things like that, you can help somebody else, even if it's smaller, because you dealt with some big thing, right? Like, it's part of why I'm passionate about doing all of this stuff in ministry is we were talking earlier, coming from the history of so much brokenness. Man, I want to help people so much with this. So anyway, in relationships, like, it's you saying, I want to take ownership of anything that I can do. In fact, it even works the other way, that where maybe you have the speck and the person that you're in a relationship with has the plank. It has helped me so much to move things where I've talked about my speck as if like where I'm taking a lot of ownership of something, right? And I know that that other person is dealing with the same thing, but they're not ready to take ownership of it. Me just sharing and saying, I know I do this, or I get stuck in this, or what have you, helps the other person to open their heart, tear their guards down more, to look at the things that they're struggling, because everybody's walking around trying to act like their lives are so perfect when there's things they're struggling with, and then nobody can share. And if you can't share and get open, this is why fellowship is such a great thing, where you can be really raw and vulnerable, then people feel safe sharing those things, and healing can happen. You get to let God in, and you're not pretending, like something's different than what it is. Anyway, okay. Kind of cool. Also, when we do that, when we're constantly looking at ourselves, it keeps our heart tender and more compassionate. Like, if anytime you see yourself pointing a finger at somebody about anything, like maybe it's about being messy. Sometimes like we have different degrees of what we like, messy or not. And sometimes my husband, might get messy or something. Then I'll find myself getting judgmental about it. Why does he keep leaving his socks on the floor or whatever? And then it helps me to look back at, well, Nancy, really, are you always, I'm definitely oriented a little bit more towards tidiness, but come on, there are plenty of times that I leave crap around or what have you. It's not like, so then it softens my heart right away and go, get off of the pedestal, and it keeps my heart soft, right? It helps in relationships. Okay. Number 1, take the plank out of your own eye before taking the speck. Okay. Number 2, you can always love agape love in every relationship. Let's go to Matthew 5. Go back just a little bit from where we were, a couple pages. Matthew 5, and in verse 43, Christ is speaking, and he says, you have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. That is current culture, right? Like, that's the way that people think it's supposed to be. Oh, we love the people that are near us, but hate the people that are our enemies. It says, but Christ says, but I say to you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you. Wow. Okay, so this is not, it's funny. It's not even saying people accidentally using you, but people spitefully doing it absolutely on purpose. Now, how can this be? This is not a worldly love. Worldly love is, you do nice things for me. I like you. We like the same things. So, I love you for those things, right? Based on that. This is the Greek word love here is agape. It's a special, supernatural, spiritual love that originates from God, so that we are filled up by his love and we have it to give. This love is so powerful, and you can love your enemies. It's unbelievable. This is why the J and the stretch goal. I hope you guys did the J. Yes. Yeah. Did some J. Did the meditations, received, and got filled up. Because when you're experiencing God's love, did you notice how it's easier to give it to others?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right? It's just like, I feel so loved. And you're loved but unconditionally, in spite of the fact that you screw up all the time too in different things, and that he loves you anyway. So we have it to give. And here's also the love of God. It is selfless. It is not thinking of yourself. It's not being self-absorbed, but it's always win-win, because with God, if we are loving with somebody, it is really being for them. It doesn't mean like enabling somebody. See, That's different. That's people pleasing. That's more about you, like you're afraid. Maybe you're in a relationship with somebody that's an alcoholic or an addict or violent or something like that, and you're trying to act like it's not going on, and you cover up that to act like, no. That's not really loving somebody. That actually is anything. It further causes hurt because it enables the bad behavior, right? So we're going to also later in this series, we're going to talk about how to speak up. We're going to talk about boundaries, things like that. But you can, agape is not a feeling, it's an act of will. And it is because God will keep taking care of you in this. Like, again, this is why being close to God, it's like where we're not looking to the relationship. If you're looking to another person for that to be your source and refuge, even when you're married, there's going to be times where one of those two people doesn't have it to give all of that, right? Maybe they're not connected with God right now or what have you. So if you're sitting there going, oh, everything's contingent on you doing certain things for me or being there for me, right? Like, this is why, number one, in all relationships, I cannot stress this enough, is allowing yourself to receive and be filled up with God, by God, and to spend time. That 15 minutes just in the presence of God, that's nothing. 15 minutes, but just having some time to be filled up and connect with His love. Anyway, okay, let's go to the third one is seek first to understand and then be understood. This is in James, almost towards the back of your Bible. These are just practical things that you can do, and they're all biblical. James 1, Stephen Covey has a book that I read years ago that was really good called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Families. Just Hebrews, James, and then Peter. James 1, and in verse 19, it says, so then, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. Okay, so this is usually the opposite for most people, right? Especially when you get into conflict with somebody and your emotions are high and you're offended and you're upset. Everybody wants to be the one to be heard, right? It's amazing how much you can hear from somebody else and it won't harm you any. Like, it works really, really well. Like, even when you're really upset, if you just allow yourself to go, I am going to zip it as much as I really want to tell this person, make them understand what they did to me. But if you zip it and say, I want to hear, I would like to hear what's bothering you right now. It's amazing how it pulls down walls, right? It's interesting. I will tell the first fight that Adam and I got into when we were engaged. And I was on a plane, and I was very proud of my new love relationship. And Adam's very romantic. My husband's the king of romance. Like, I get flowers all the time. It's amazing. I love that so much about him. He tells me I'm beautiful and that he loves me. Anyway, so I always anticipate that this is how my husband will be. So I was away from him for the first time on a trip for like a week or something. We had never been apart. And so I'm away on the trip, and I'm sitting next to these two ladies, and I'm bragging about the greatness of my relationship. And in my mind, I said, oh, you got to meet my fiance. And in my brain, I'm thinking, he's going to be there with this giant thing of flowers because, of course, this is what my husband does. I get off, and he just barely left the house to pick me up. So he's not even going to be there on time to pick me up. And I was so mortified. So I call him up and I'm just yelling about, yeah, how could you? And again, this is what we talked about with the emotion thing, right? Like, I'm thinking, I don't feel very loved at all. That you would, like, you don't care. We were apart for the first time and here you are. You couldn't even be here when my plane gets here. And I forgot what happened, but I think I got upset and I hung up. So, I know, you're going, oh, Nancy, yes, okay. So anyway, so he calls me back and he hears me. He did this very well. And then so he's like, I want to hear. And so that I told him, I think the first time I didn't tell him everything, I just hung up. And then the second time he's like, I want to hear, blah, blah, blah. So I go ahead and like tell him, how I'm feeling. And he's like, okay, I could see that. And then he's like, But I just want to tell you, I'm crying thinking about it. I'm asking you to never hang up on me again because it makes me feel like you're going to walk away from the relationship. And I was like, oh. And because he had heard me, I realized I was the one that was way wrong. Like, I just started bawling, and I was like, I'm so sorry, you're right. I was like, oh my God. Like, it was just like so embarrassing to think that I was kind of obsessed with my point of view. But it was like so easy to hear what he had to say because he was like willing to listen, right? So it's amazing, and it doesn't cost you anything. Even if the other person is absolutely wrong, like in my instance, like it doesn't hurt you to hear what's going on, how people are feeling, blah, 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 blah. Be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath, slow to anger. Okay, let's go to number 4. Also in the Stephen Covey book, putting deposits into people's emotional bank account. In a relationship, you can either make deposits or you can make withdrawals from somebody's emotional bank account. And in every relationship, we will be making withdrawals because we're all flawed people in some kind of way. So the goal here is to minimize the withdrawals from the emotional bank account and to try and maximize the deposits into it. So deposits into, we'll read this in Ephesians 4 and just a few books that away. Ephesians 4 and go past Thessalonians, Colossians, Philippians, and then Ephesians 4. And this gives you kind of a list of just a few. Some are deposits, some are withdrawals. And there's many, many verses that describe what not to do, what to do in these relationships. So in verse 31, it says, let all bitterness, wrath, anger, clamor, and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice, and be kind one to another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, just as God in Christ forgave you. So these are just a few. But for instance, some of the withdrawals might be saying things that are out of control. Some of the withdrawals might be being critical, right? Nitpicking, nagging, that kind of thing. Those are withdrawals from somebody's bank account. What are the things that you're pointing out that are wrong with the person? People out of fear, there's no fear in love. That's agape love, right? But perfect love casts out fear. But a lot of times people are afraid to validate somebody and to say why they're wonderful. Even you can do that even when you're upset with somebody. People have this idea, even when there's a conflict between me and Adam, I will try to find something that I value to tell him about. Like I'm very upset with you right now, but I love you and you're a good man. And and so people are too stingy with that. And they think, they get this false idea somebody's going to get it over on them. That's not true at all. It is not true at all. And it helps people to hear when sometimes the things that you got to speak, which we'll talk about again more with the speaking up, is if you pick your battles, that you're not in terms of things that really matter. And for the most part, you are in relationships helping somebody to see their value and why they're special and why they're unique and why they're amazing. And, tell my husband he's sexy all the time and I love his lips and they're so delicious and, that he's so sweet, and thank him for things. Like he's always, which is really sweet because he's always like, wow, you say thank you for everything. But I am truly still grateful for, honey, thanks for taking the trash out, or thank you for this, or, to not take things for granted, but to think of lots of deposits. And then also when you have lots of deposits, when you screw up, there's a cushion there. Do you know what I mean? And so, but if there isn't that and you've got withdrawals, it could take a while to kind of rebuild trust and what have you. And then I love in this, be kind and tenderhearted. Tenderhearted, the Bible speaks a lot about having our heart be soft. A lot of you guys think that you've protected yourselves by hardening your heart, by building walls, by not allowing yourself to care. It does not protect your heart that way. Protecting your heart is more about things like boundaries and speaking up and those kind of things that we're going to be teaching you guys in this. But we want to have tender hearts and we want to be forgiving. Fifth one is self-control, to postpone gratification and self-control. Let's look at Proverbs 29 and It's kind of in the middle, kind of towards the middle. Okay, it's before Ecclesiastes. And in verse 11 it says, a fool vents all his feelings, but a wise man holds them back. So, and then there's another one. I'm going to read this one, but you might want to write it down. Another one in this, especially is about what you say, is James 1:26. If anyone among you thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue, but deceives his own heart, this one's religion is useless. So it has a lot of things in the Bible about controlling the things that we speak. Sometimes in the withdrawal section of relationships, people say things that are below the belt, say things that are hurtful. I think people will attack somebody for maybe something in their looks, or marry people that threaten divorce. That should never come out of your mouth. That should be that you do boundaries and not be just out of anger spewing things. That those things just can never be taken back once they're out there. And so a big part of our part is to make sure that we are not saying things that are just like, what, like vomiting emotionally on somebody else in the relationship. Things like also the self-control, like flirting with other people, right? Checking other people out kind of thing is hurtful. I don't know anybody that feels good in a relationship, even though people say that that's acceptable, but I've never met a person yet that it doesn't bother them to, in some kind of way that, even if you're talking about celebrities, like, I'm sorry, I don't want to be hearing about how some famous person is even hot or has whatever good hot body or anything like that kind of thing. These are areas that like deplete. They're things that take away in relationships. Number 6, letting go of wrongs and not keeping score. Let's go to Proverbs. We're already in Proverbs 19 and in verse 11. Proverbs 19 and verse 11. It says, the discretion of a man makes him slow to anger, and his glory is to overlook a transgression. Okay, nobody's going to survive if you're constantly saying everything that bothers you, right? And what I mentioned before, as far as picking your battles go, we have like differences, my husband and I, on many different things. We definitely differ in what our ideas are about like neatness or whatever. And sometimes people moralize that. Like, if you're sloppy, that's wrong. No, everybody's got this range of what they think is okay, like I think this makes it comfortable or lived in or whatever. But sometimes people like to turn that into a right or wrong as opposed to character things. Character things we talked about before are things like lying, right? Deception, cheating on somebody, right? Addiction, alcoholism, drug addictions, abusiveness. Those are character issues. Like, you want to, for the most part, not speak up unless you're dealing with character issues. And then we'll talk about how to talk about preferences, but you've got to be yielding in these things. You cannot turn preferences into like how people dress or how fit somebody is. Everybody's got different ideas of what that is. And we want to, when we get to the boundary thing, take care of, what we want to, but not try and impose some of these ideas on somebody else. Number 7 is speaking up and getting help. 7 and 8, I guess. Matthew 18. And we're going to elaborate on this one later, but I just want to tell you, these are some things that you can do in a relationship. Matthew 18 and in verse 15 it says, moreover, if your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. This is huge. It's not helping you if you're talking to everybody else about what you're upset about somebody and you're not telling that person. And especially if you're talking to other people that know that person, you're talking behind their back. And so we shouldn't really want to listen to that unless you're getting counsel, but that should be one person that is maybe somebody very trusted spiritually that can coach you on how to talk to the person only, but that's it. But then you better go talk to that person, or that makes you unsafe that you're having all these things going on and the person doesn't even know it. So the first thing is you go tell somebody that something that's bothering you, right? And then it says, if he hears you, you've gained your brother. But if he will not hear, take with you one or two more, that by mouth 2 or 3 witnesses, every word may be established. So this is where sometimes you go get counseling, or maybe it's even just a friend that loves both of you, and like that is not biased against one person or the other, or somebody that will be there to help sort of, what do you call it? Not referee, but you know what I mean? Like, kind of help the two people in that to come together. The goal is to bring relationships together, right? And then after that, it says you can open it up to more people, tell the church. And then if he still refuses to hear, it says, let him be to you like a heathen and a tax collector. A lot of times people interpret that as, like, get out of my life. Again, it should be very rare that it's like, get out of my life forever. But it is having a relationship where you're saying, we're just not going to be as close. Like, I'm not going to be besties with you anymore. I'm not going to trust you with my innermost secrets because I haven't been able to. So you try and work it out. You try and get others to help you, etc. But if not, then maybe you step away in the away how close you are. Maybe you're just, sometimes I have people where I'm like, wow, I thought we were closer, but we're not. And it hasn't been resolved. So I might see them occasionally socially, but they're just not somebody that I'm going to spend tons and tons of time with, or maybe on social media, you just message each other or something like that. And then number 9 is, so speaking up is 1, 8 is getting help, 9 is boundaries, which we'll talk about more in detail in another section of this, but boundaries are limits that you have for yourself. It might be, for instance, somebody's saying rude things to you and cussing you out or what have you on the phone, and you say, you know what, if you continue to call me those things, I'm going to have to hang up. The only condition I'm going to speak to you would be as if you speak to me with respect, kind of thing. It could be if somebody has been where they're not, maybe sometimes in dating or whatever, somebody's not like respecting a physical boundary, then you just say, I'm not going to be alone with you anymore if you're not hearing why this matters to me or what my limits are there. So those are boundaries. Those are limits that you're not putting on another person. You're just saying what you will do or not do. And so these are also steps that you can take in terms of helping a relationship. Okay, number 10 of things that you can do is to give respect. And giving respect is understanding that people might have other choices, other opinions than you, and to be respectful in your differences. We should be able to get along with people that are different. I just want to say we should actually be able to love and respect people, for instance, that are different politically. I know, don't like, anyway, I'm just saying, like, there's no perfect political party or what have you. So it should be, there are people that I have great differences with, but I still love and respect them as people. There might be conversations that we're not going to have together because it could get a little heated or not, and that's okay too. Like, why can't you have relationships where you're going, that topic's not going to work for us very well, but that you just respect people's differences and opinions on that. Okay, so I just want to kind of, in finishing up this, kind of go through different relationships because it changes, right? Like friendship, you're not obligated to be friends for life with anybody. Sometimes people really do grow apart in their interests, and maybe the relationship wasn't as close as you thought, but it should again be that we're trying to live peaceably, like maybe they're people we care about, but we just message on social media or talk to once a year, once every couple of years, kind of a thing. Work relationships, you're kind of stuck with that for a little bit, and it's just sort of having a realistic expectation that you're not going to, we're going to constantly be dealing with people that have issues, right? And so what can we do to live peaceably in them before you jump ship? Family, usually, for the most part, we don't usually leave family. Sometimes that happens when things are pretty extreme, kind of a situation, but maybe we limit the amount of time. Maybe we'll talk more in the boundaries thing. again saying, I'm not going to talk about this with you. We seem to not see eye to eye. Or it might be, I really need to have this conversation to feel closer to you. But we'll talk a little bit more about that in this speaking up. With dating, again, it's not a permanent relationship, so you can try things. But I think that sometimes, especially if it's been a physical, sexual relationship, it's really hard to go being friends truly, you know? Sometimes people try that, but there's still like all of these mixed feelings. If you have a hard time speaking up to somebody and you've been in a romantic relationship with them and you're trying to be friends, that might not be the best situation. And those relationships aren't meant to be like forever kind of a thing if that's not the person you're spending your life with. A spouse, Jesus said that when it came to marriage, that Moses allowed divorce for adultery because of the hardness of their hearts. Now you think like, oh, adultery is pretty intense. It is. It's very, very intense. I know for anybody that has experienced that, it's very hard to restore a relationship like that. But in a marriage situation, unless there is danger, physical abuse, that kind of a thing, they're intended to be a lifelong relationship. Mind you, I divorced my first husband. I absolutely believe that I didn't do everything I could have done before I left. So that was absolutely wrong on my part, that I did not do my part in it. Thankfully, there is grace. But truly, if you don't do the work and the change, and a lot of times people get married and they're just looking to get a different person and not doing the work on them. If you don't do the work on you, then you're just bringing it into the next relationship. So it's always better to try to resolve things if you can, because this is somebody you said you're going to spend your life with. And I've definitely seen married couples where they were really extreme, far gone, and people got healing because one person did the stuff that they're supposed to do and it brought the other person around. It doesn't need to be both people. The Bible even says that by your own behavior that you can win your spouse over in many ways. So not to leave, like to do the part that you can do. Okay, you guys. So next week, super special. Alberto Escalante is going to be teaching, and I got a little glimpse, so it's going to be super exciting. Let me just go through the stretch goal for this week. Let's see. It's can you read the stretch goal for this week in your booklet? If you go to your booklet right here.
Number 1, practice God's love this week by telling 5 people in your life how much they matter to you and why they are so special.
Aww. Can we say that together? Aww.
It helps if you ask Christ to show you how he sees them and how to love them with his love. Go to Appendix C and make a list of people you want to try this with. You can always do more than 5 because it's fun. And if you want to give some extra love to those people, you can always invite them to the big day. Number 2, have a spiritual spa by listening to the 15-minute meditation so you can get filled up. It's better than a vacation.
Yes. Okay. So here's the thing for this week. 2 things. Definitely the 15-minute meditations for sure, because you got to get filled up and restored by God so you have it to give. It makes a massive difference. So that's always there, stretch goal, right? Number 2, though, isn't this cool? Don't you think this will be kind of fun? Tell 5 people in your life. And there's the Appendix C at the end here. You got all these little Appendix C. It's like right here at the end. So you can write the names. It says prayer list. But you're going to tell those 5 people how much they mean to you and why they are so special and wonderful. So that's you just stepping out a little bit, putting some deposits with the love of God into people's emotional bank accounts. And if you want to go further, you could invite them to the big day at Coyote Ranch. It's going to be so much fun. Anyway, love you guys. See you next week.
Until I took the break from dating and started to discover what type of relationship I really wanted and needed, and that's platonically and romantically. And, what am I searching for? And that I look back at these experiences and that I didn't find anything like that. And in this time, I've discovered what I am looking for. And that's, super exciting for me. And someone that is valuing themselves. And I think that's what really came up for me during this time of not dating, is that I've established what my values are. I understand what they are because I see how some of my behaviors have been destructive and leaving a wake of hurt behind me. And I'm embarrassed about that. Um, I feel awful. I can't change it, but I can learn from it. And I am grateful that I have in a lot of areas, and I'm sure there's more to discover. Um, but that's, where I'm at with that. And I'm feel pretty blessed to understand what I do value. And that's what I'm looking for in someone who I will date in the future. Someone who values honesty, trust, openness, and most importantly, I think someone who's valuing and even demonstrating growth spiritually as well as emotionally, and that's something important to them. I dream about someone who will fight for me just as much as I want to fight for them. And this is something that I thought I was doing for the longest time in my life. However, I really wasn't. I was lost. I was completely lost, chasing after, it felt like the wind, chasing after things I saw in movies and emulating things I saw as a kid and not even realizing what I was doing. And I'm just so thankful to not be in that space today.
I've gotten to the place where I really want to be the kind of guy that is good for someone else. Because I definitely had a lot of issues too. I had a lot of problems in my last relationship that wasn't all in them. I didn't really know how to treat people right. And I didn't really know how to communicate well, even with other people. And I think being involved with a community of people that have stressed the importance of that for me has been really important. And now I am looking forward to, when I have a lot of healing and when I have more growth in me, then hopefully I'll be able to, be a good guy for someone else. So.
One time I was at a club and she didn't know that I was going to be at the same club, so I started talking to another guy, and it was just, it was a mess. I was so hurt, and so I wanted to get her back, so I started talking to other girls right in front of her and started hugging these girls and just pretty much ignoring her. She was ignoring me, talking to the guy, and just we would look at each other and just it was just a game. We were playing that game to where who's gonna get more jealous, or look, I got her, or you got him, and it was nothing but games.
I've always been the type of guy where I've always wanted to be really romantic, and I really wanted to put my heart out there really quickly, and it's been rough as far as that's concerned. It's been a really bad combination when I put that along with the type of women that I used to be attracted to. I used to be really attracted to girls that I think had been very hurt and were very distant and not really available in any way. And I think in a way that I had sort of, I don't know, like a prince complex, where I felt like maybe I could save them, or maybe I could be the guy that comes in and rescues them and makes everything better. I think that was really my fantasy. And gosh, I would fall deep into it really hard, very quickly.
Those three areas, getting into relationships quickly and Uh, Also, just finding needy people and even seeking out needy people because that's what love meant to me really didn't work out so well. At a very early age, around 4 or 5, my parents were going through a divorce, and this was something I felt responsible for just because I was around. And ultimately, I ended up, living with my mom in a single family environment, or single parent environment rather. And it was difficult. It was very, very challenging in the sense that what I found was it was better for me to worry about everybody else and take care of everyone else's emotional needs instead of my own. There was lots of drama, a lot of immaturity in certain areas in the family, and we were poor, and there was a lot of stress and pretty stressful. So, in that, I developed a sense that I didn't have room. There was no room for me to have needs, to express emotions.
Wow, wasn't that a powerful teaching, and those sharings so real and so relatable? It's just amazing. The hits just keep coming because I've got something for you. It's a hard act to follow. But this is from 2 Corinthians chapter 8 and verse 12. It says, "For if there is first a willing mind, it is accepted according to what one has, and not according to what he does not have." So what is this about? This is about the first thing that, God's kind of calling us and giving us an opportunity to do is where we are in our mind, how we relate, our willingness to take a risk on God, and having a willingness to want to serve Him or have a relationship with Him, and bond in our relationship and test Him by doing a giving of our finances. And so whatever it is that we're willing to offer. And the thing is, God accepts you for where you're at. He accepts you according to what you have, whatever you're willing to give. He's not calling you to give what you do not have. He's just calling to maybe give some of what you do have. And so I see this principle applied not just in giving to God, but it helps me. Giving just helps me to have that mindset to be able to give and serve other people as well. To be able to help people that I love, to be able to serve whoever it is that I might date, or people in my fellowship, just whoever. It's just hey, one day maybe I might have a family, and I might be able to want to give to them. And what I do today in growing with God in giving, it just makes me a better human being, and I feel better about myself. I feel great in my heart, and I feel happy. So what can I say? It's a win-win-win all around. This is how God works. And so you can certainly get blessed today and do an ongoing blessing of giving if you like, a one-time giving or ongoing, like I said. You can go to the Searchlight Fellowship app under the heart icon that says giving, or the Searchlight Fellowship website in the giving section, and there you have it. Enjoy this fellowship time. This is already week 3. There's only 6 weeks left, so the time's gonna fly, and God's got big plans for your healing and growth in this series and beyond. So enjoy it. God bless you, and I'll see you guys soon.